Listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. Hello one, hello all. Welcome to yet another episode of this podcast where we obsess over the details in punk, hardcore, indie rock, emo, metal, whatever genre or subgenre you care about. As long as it's of the DIY variety, that is what we discuss. And today, of course, is no exception, because if I was breaking my own rules, I mean, I guess that's technically punk, but I'm not going to do that. Today, I've got Ken Susi, who is the founding member and ex-member of Unearth, and he also played in As I Lay Dying, which obviously is not a thing anymore. We talk a little bit about that. He also is a friend of mine, great dude. He also works for Fishman, which is a company that exists in the guitar world. They do a lot of work with like pickups and stuff like that. I am not a guitarist, so I'm not going to pretend to describe what they do, but he talks a lot about that as well. But Ken is just a consummate entertainer. He's one of those guys where you hang out with and you're just like, my gosh, like I either love this guy or I hate this guy. I personally love him. Some people, feel a different way about him, and that's fine. He's fine with that. He knows who he is, and that is what is incredibly engaging for me as a friend of his to be like, man, I love what you are, and I love what you do. So, and Ken spent many, many years on the road with Unearth. That's where I first ran across him, and just a incredible guitarist, but then, like I said, a entertainer that he just makes you pay attention to him in a good way. So I had to have him on. It's been years and we've kind of circled around this idea. And then finally we were like, I need to do this. We need to get into it. So we got Ken this week and I'm excited to have him. You can also support the show because I do get emails from people being like, hey, can I donate money? Can I do something for a Patreon? Or no, don't worry about any of that. I exist off of the kindness of our sponsors and you as the listener for the audience that continues to grow. But if you want to support the show, you can, of course, always email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. Love to receive any and all feedback that you may have. You can also leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page or just simply leave a rating on Spotify. All of those things help. I literally do pay attention to those numbers as they rise. And if I could individually thank you, I would, but consider this a catch-all, as it were. But those things will help the show get recommended to the people who need to hear it. Because after all, word of mouth, that's truthfully the best way that you can share the things that you love to other people. I have to shout out to my son, my 14-year-old child, who I'm going to lay the groundwork here. There's many classic bands and records that I think us that fall into the, punk and hardcore rabbit hole, like we know they're important bands, whether it's Rolling Stones, Black Sabbath, all that sort of stuff. And then, maybe later on in life, later in the teen years, maybe early 20s, you start to listen to those things and be like, actually, wow, these are really good. I just kind of ignored them because I was, too busy listening to NoFX or whatever. And the more and more that I get older, my appreciation for the things that my son is getting into is just, it's blowing my mind. Where I'm like, you know what? Rolling Stones, they're kind of onto something. And I know this doesn't sound like a very revolutionary thought, but it's just interesting how your musical taste starts to be informed by other people, even beyond just like your group of friends. And it's just a very fun experiment as he's getting into, a lot of classic rock stuff, Led Zeppelin, like I said. I'm really excited he's listening to Black Sabbath now, but it's just, it's very interesting to see how the musical tastes evolve over time. And you can still, identify as a punk or a hardcore kid, but then you start to, ladder up to all these other things. And it's just music. It's the gift that keeps on giving, right? So I am actually en route to a trip with my son for a week. So my response times will be a little bit slower if you are emailing me. But I'm excited to unplug, get off the grid for a minute. We're doing a camping trip with his Boy Scouts. And that'll be fun, I think, fun adjacent. But yeah, so That's what we got for this week. Let's talk to Ken Susi from, or ex-Unearth, present guitarist, but also works at Fishman Pickups. And I'm excited to have him. So let's go. I mean, I cannot pinpoint exactly when we met. Obviously, it was during the Unearth era of your life.
When you were in Curl Up and Die, and I was in Unearth.
Exactly.
That's
around that when time. When I was doing double duty between Taken and Curl Up and Die.
Yep.
What struck me about you, and truthfully, this really came flooding back when we saw each other, 6 months or so ago, at the New England Metal and Hardcore Festival, is that you are a person that I don't think, outside of the context of us being involved in like punk and hardcore and stuff like that, I don't know if we would be friends. That doesn't mean anything bad. It just means like you are a very loud, boisterous person, and sometimes and you right. Clearly that about yourself. The thing that makes me like you, and I know why other people might not like you because of it, is just because I'm like, you are inherently you, and that is why I love you. All that to say, have you just basically always been kind of this person that's just like, oh yeah, like no matter what situation, I am going to be able to take the piss out of it, make a joke of it, but then I'm also genuine about the joke. Like I'm not, doing it just to like make fun of somebody.
Well, it's a good question, and I agree with you in the sense that we all live different lives and stuff, and 23-year-old Ken Susi is not the same as 46-year-old Ken Susi for sure. But what I will say is that I grew up in a town called Danvers, Massachusetts, and it's a very small town. So your reputation is kind of everything, right? Because you can't mess up with any aspect of your life, or the whole town would know, right? So I grew up playing sports, and I was captain of this team, and blah blah blah, and I was a pretty straight and narrow kind of person. But being a creative type such as yourself, you find yourself like creating a persona, or being like, who you are, but you can't act that way because you live in a very confined town. And I always had like visions of being on stage and doing big things. I think back to like the first concert I ever went to, real concert, it was Kiss, Winger, and Slaughter, right? And I remember Kip Winger like flipping his bass around, and his chest hair popped out, and all the girls bent over and like were screaming, and I was like, I'm 9 years old, but this is what I want, So there's an illusion that musicians have to, create in order to, be honest with themselves, and be a part of yourself. But like, I think we'd be very good friends because I'm pretty boring, but I do have that like adrenaline type, let's get in trouble kind of vibe. And I know you're not that kind of guy. So there's like two pieces of me. So there's like home Ken, hometown Ken. People know me as like this really nice kid. And then there's like the band guy Ken, who has been pretty risque and just kind of wild. And I like to crack jokes. I like to see people smile. I guess to answer your question, like as short as I could, but as short as I can, is that I think I created a person that is within me to be the outward facing, Ken Susi brand. And that is being abrasive and fun and reckless and kind of crazy. And none of that's like untrue, but I always had a sense to like not do drugs and not do like all the bad stuff. Like I did drink, but I wasn't like crazy. I could have got a lot worse. So I'm pretty grounded. Like I never got tattoos. My best friend showed up to a Palladium show where we sold it out, and I sold it out. And he's like, dude, he owned a tattoo shop and all this. And he's like, all my tattoo artists want to tattoo you for free, and like it'll be good promotion. And I'm like, dude, I'm like 23 years old. I'm like, I got to go to work after this. Like I can't have tattoos on my neck. You know what I mean? So like there's a lot of things that are reckless that I wouldn't do. Not saying like tattoos on your neck are bad, but I'm just saying like I always have like higher goals in life and things to do, and and I don't know, man. I'm just that type of person where I'm just that creative, and I like to create like the vibe for whatever time it is. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like I just like it I love to like walk into a room and make the unthinkable happen. That's my favorite thing. And like, I could tell you stories that would like make your mind melt, but like, but like I used to like to see all my guys like, okay, let me use just one, like, it's not an analogy, but an actual instance that happened. Like, I remember my guys like always used to like, they're single and stuff, and they always used to like waste their night hitting on a girl backstage. Ken Susi would be like, all right, I got an idea. This girl works, for us as our, personal assistant, or tour manager. Let's just pretend that she's not with us and put her in the audience, and then like wrangle a bunch of chicks. And then she starts talking to them and like figuring out who like, likes who and whatever. And then everyone just kind of like flocks to the girls that she says like, oh yeah, this girl likes you, that girl likes you, that girl, you know what I mean? Like, but that's those are the type of like Ken Susi ideas that like are gold, because guys are like, oh, that's so amazing. I'm so glad you did that. I didn't waste my night on holding the wrong girl's drink,
Well, and I appreciate all of the thoughts there, because I do think like that is what I know, like I said at the beginning, attracted me towards you, because you were so unapologetically yourself. But at the same time, it's like there was this element of sincerity behind it. And I think I'm probably presuming that's obviously why you got attracted to like punk and hardcore and everything, because you were removing the artifice of, whatever, seeing, Slaughter and Kiss, where you're like, oh yeah, like there's the performance element, but like I don't need makeup or whatever. Even though you did wear makeup at one point, I'm sure.
No. Well, no, just in my room when I wanted to look like Gene Simmons.
Sure.
Which I still do from time to time, yeah. But no, it's actually funny. Like, I'll tell this story because it's pretty on par and on brand with what you're saying right now. Like, I know a lot of people didn't like me back in the day just because I was just party guy. And like even Devin Townsend, he works with me now through Fluence and stuff, and we're very good friends. But I remember him; he used to like do a lot of like, he used to sit in a tent at Ozfest and hang out with his friends and probably like do a lot of drugs or whatever and hang. And then I was like the guy would like, like, yeah, where the chicks at? Woo, booze. And he and I like talked to each other one time, and he was like, oh yeah, like I used to like not like you. And then I'm like, yeah, like you too, mutually. But like, he's like, I love you. And I'm like, yeah, no, I love you too. So it's like, until you get to know somebody, and even Mike Justin in Unearth. Do you know Mike at all? He was in the Red Court. Okay. So he and I were like this constantly. I couldn't stand him because he was like, so like, I don't know. He would get aggressive with me for having fun. And then I would probably upset him because I was, being loud and having fun. He liked to be more of an artist, and I like to be more of like a party dude. So like there was a time where our relationship in the band was awful, and now we're great friends. And like we had that moment where we had to talk about it well after he left the band for other reasons, of course. But like I can see why my personality is abrasive to a lot of people and annoying. But I like that because those are the friends I don't want.
It's true. There's a good filter where it's just like, if you can't see past this, this person I'm presenting, and you're not seeing like all the different layers of me, like we can't get along. Yeah.
Yeah. I just made a friend recently. I went to a friend of a friend asked me to go to a Bruins game with him, and we got wasted together.
Right.
And mind you, I'm 46. And then something happened at the end of the night where it just rubbed each other the wrong way. And by the time we went from the Boston Garden to his house, we were squaring up in his front yard. Like we were going to box, we were going to fight each other. And the next day we called each other and we're like, oh man, like, I don't know if you want to hang out again, but like, I'm sorry. And we had that like, I'm sorry moment, because we're both hockey players. And the funny part is that I said to him specifically, I'm like, dude, I would rather have a friend like you where I know you wear your heart on your sleeve than someone who's passive aggressive that's just, may talk shit behind my back or just, be my fake friend for a while. Like I'm only looking for real people. So maybe the way I act is that I'm trying to filter out those that I shouldn't be hanging out with anyway.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean?
So kind of dovetailing off of that, the fact that you got attracted to wanting to play in a band, and kind of the big nature of what you started to experience just watching those early concerts and stuff. Was guitar always your thing, or did you sample other instruments before?
No, my brother is probably my brother and sister are far better musicians than I am. I'm a good guitar player, but my brother's a phenomenal guitar player. So he was 5 years older than me, so I looked up to everything he did, and I would always sneak into his room and play his guitar. So everything that I've learned is like through him or like watching what he does. But I was always into heavy metal, and he was into like glam. You know what I mean? Like Kiss, Warrant, like all like that kind of stuff. But he was also into like Ingve and all the shredders and stuff. So I got really damn good at guitar. He's phenomenal. And I still to this day go over to his house and I'm like, oh, dude, I'm trying to learn this lick. You remember that lick? And he's like, oh, yeah. So I'm always still the little brother in the scenario. Right. But I always play guitar. My dad played in a surf rock band. So every conversation around my house, my dad and my mother's brother, right? My uncle were in the same surf rock band, right? They were friends as kids. So every conversation at my dinner, like being an Italian home, every Sunday was like we would like break bread and eat pasta together. It was always like, who's the greatest guitar player in the world? And Buddy Rich is the best drummer. And like we'd have these philosophical conversations about the Beatles and then chord progressions and things. And so like my whole life was centered around music. Even though I played sports and did other things, like music was always like that pipe dream, like, oh, he's becoming famous. And then like, I just so happened out of the three of us, my brother and sister went to music school and I was the one who was more, I would say, creative and go-getting. I was able to like take the things that I like and shake it up, in one jar and then like start to, how do I say it without claiming ownership? Just take the elements of like what metalcore was forming into and then like creating my own twist on it. I was always like into Iron Maiden and I was into Crowbar and like, other bands like that. So heavy metal bands, I listen to everything, but I always liked, Iron Maiden style stuff. So at the time when I was a little kid, I was like 13 years old playing in bands with guys that are like 16, 17 years old. And they would call me Metal Kenny, like it was like a diss. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, look, it's Metal Kenny. And I was, yeah, what's up? And like, I was kind of a dork to them because I wasn't playing straight edge hardcore. I wasn't playing like Earth Crisis or like, Youth of Today and like, you know what I mean? Floor Punch and stuff like that. So they just looked at me as this like metal kid with a mullet and I wasn't cool. And like there was bands like Converge and stuff at the time, and there was bands like Cave In and stuff and like we were all kind of the same ilk, which was kind of cool because once I started seeing those bands, I'm like, oh, this is like the stuff I'm writing. And then eventually I just ended up starting my own band, with Unearth, and the rest is history. But music was always embedded in my life. Like even though I was playing sports every weekend, my father was driving me to concerts, like alone too, because none of my friends in my town like that stuff. I had my dad drive me an hour away, like from my house to Salisbury Beach, which is, I know you're West Coast, so you don't know where that is, but it's like an hour north, to go see Death when I was 14. And he dropped me off at the front door. And he's just like, all right, I'll be outside. You know what I mean? Go watch the show. And then I came out and he's like, how was it? I'm like, I'm so sick. I saw Chuck Schuldiner. And he could care less. But you know what I'm saying? I always had that. Like,
that's incredible. That's especially too, because the ability to see that you are getting into something that clearly is a love language for your parents, that music is important, but they're not going to understand death. So the fact your dad was just like, do your thing, talk to me about it afterwards.
Yeah. Do you know how many times like I'd be like I was like a captain of like a hockey team and stuff, and I played soccer, but so many of the musclehead like hockey guys knew I played in bands, like metal bands, like as a little kid, and I would be lacing up my skates and like they'd put on like Metallica for me. And then they'd be like, Seuss, you really like this fucking kill your mother, kill your father music? And I'd be like, yeah, dude, it's awesome. Yeah. You know what I mean? But, like Metallica's Gateway, I'm already listening to like Napalm Death and Morbid Angel. You know what I mean? But I'm like, yeah, I like to kill your mother,
totally.
Kill your father.
You're like, yeah, that's really pedestrian. You want to hear, hammer smashed face? Like, calm down. Yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah, dude. I was so into like Anthrax and stuff. And so like, and that stuff, and it went all over their heads like big time. But a lot of my metalhead friends like hockey friends and stuff used to like to go to the concerts.
That's cool.
Stuff with me,
Were you, as like you said, you were doing a lot of stuff as far as school and being active in sports and then also playing in bands and stuff. Did you care about the scholastic pursuit, or was that something that you're just like, well, I'm here, like, I guess I'll get okay grades?
It's funny that you said that. Like, no, when I was a kid, I got into I just got into like elementary school and middle school and all that stuff. I didn't really blossom into a student until I hit like I wasn't like dumb or anything. I was just middle of the road classes. But once I hit my stride, was like high school was like where I started really like understanding that my academics were important. Versus, like I obviously I wanted to get into a good school, so you had to have a good GPA and all that other stuff. But also I recognized that like if I was going to get a sports scholarship, I'd also have to be a student. Right. So, even though on the weekends I have pictures, I'll send you one. It's hilarious. Like there's me holding up like an award at school in fifth grade. And I'm wearing a Metallica shirt with the skull and you know what I mean? Like something smashed in the skull. But, no, not until like when I hit college, I was obsessed, like just like I was with guitar. I was absolutely obsessed with like statistics and like management and stuff like that, numbers like finance. So I really hit my stride there. And believe it or not, like I was like a B-ish student in high school, but when I graduated college, I finished in with two majors in 3 years with a 3.8 grade point average at probably one of the best state business
Nice.
schools, UMass Boston. So I was I really got into school then, and most of it, not half of it, but most of it was because of the curriculum shift from being almost like babysat at high school with teachers. Is always like if you have downtime, teachers are like, oh, just act busy. Whereas in college, they would be like, here's your syllabus. If you do your work, you graduate. And for me, that was incentive. I was like, oh, I'll read ahead. I'll be a chapter ahead, because when we're talking about this stuff, it'll make more sense if I'm a chapter or two ahead, because then you can start conceptualizing like what the foundations are. So I was just like, I took that principle and moved on with it. So school was awesome, but I was on soccer scholarship. I was the starting goalkeeper for the UMass team, and I played hockey as well. So that took up a lot of my time. And just like a professional athlete in college, it's almost like being a professional musician, where you're in a bus, you're sleeping in hotels, you're doing all that stuff and trying to study at the same time. But on top of that, I was also doing Unearth. So I was playing two collegiate sports, as well as on like Thursdays, I would like hop in a van and drive to Philly, New York, and you know what I mean? And all these different places in Montreal and stuff, and just play these one-offs, and then get like to school on time in the van to do a test. And I'd be studying all night in the van. So like it became too hard. So I started going to school in the summer and the winter, just to try to get college over with, because I had a feeling that Unearth was going to pop. I knew it. Like I just knew that like what we were doing, like people started knowing the words, and it was just like I felt like something was going to happen. And at the time, I was a tax examiner for the Mass Department of Revenue, and I ended up like getting a sick job for like, I don't know, it was like 70 grand a year in 2000, and I had to go home to like my parents and be like, I'm gonna like tour with my band and like not do this. And my mom's like, why would you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. And then I just did. And like, I was like, Unearth had this understanding. We're going to do this for 2 years. And if it doesn't work out, we're going back to our normal lives. And luckily, after 2 years of that, I was on tour with Dimebag, and my mother like was like, hey, it's been 2 years. What do you think? And I'm like, I'm on tour with Dimebag. Like, go in split. But everything I learned in college definitely paved the way for running the books correctly for the band, and understanding finance. And like, that's stuff that like I was good at, keeping a zero balance for merchandise, and, understanding like math for like, how much money you had to get to and from places and stuff like that. So it came in handy.
Let's be honest, since the dawn of time, merch has been incredibly important for bands, and that is where the awesome people at evilgreed.net are here to help you, because they have web stores for a bunch of different bands and record labels, all with this specific point of view. They have a tagline: heavy music, merchandise, and records, and that is what they deliver. I don't care if you're into bands like Speed or Knocked Loose, or if you're into more metal stuff like Bell Witch and Blood Incantation, Spectral Wound. All of those things are offered up in one convenient place. They're based in Berlin, Germany, but do not fear, the shipping rates to us here in the United States are very advantageous. On top of all that, they have cool vinyl. They have some exclusive colors, and they ship that all to you in a very convenient fashion. I know myself, when I first started to get into this whole subculture, I just like looked for places where I could order multiple things. And that is why evilgreed.net is the place where you need to point your web browser and check it out. I mean, they got cool pre-orders, they got merch, and it's a great store. So go support them. They're all punk and hardcore kids that work there. They live it and breathe it. And that is why I love them. Not to mention, they've got great bands and merch. You get it. evilgreed.net. Go now.
In the time it takes you to actually board that flight from Group 8,
now boarding Premier Altitude Elite Club members.
You could have bought a Hyundai on Amazon. Yes, that Amazon, where you buy everything else.
Mid-tier Altitude Elite, feel free to board now.
So while you're waiting for them to make up new boarding groups, you can order your dream car and the dealer will have it ready in no time.
Now boarding groups 1 through 7.
Oh, so close. Visit HyundaiUSA.com or call 562-314-4603 for more details. Limited availability, pickup through participating Hyundai dealer in select markets.
What you're describing too also really makes sense in the context of obviously what I know about you, but just in like the DIY nature. I mean, everything you're talking about your college experience is exactly what like you just make it happen for your band. And like that could be booking a show, recording a demo or whatever.
Yeah.
So it seems like you took like a duck to water with that sort of stuff pretty easily with Unearth, where you're like, okay, between you and Trevor, like both of you guys are driven people to be like, okay,
yep,
we're dividing and conquering. Let's focus.
Yeah. You, Trevor, call all the booking agents. Me, I'll worry about all the merch and, and like whatever, we dealt with that for years. What I will say is that, if you didn't know this about me, and I think my persona that I've kind of created is very, very like 80s, like Cinderella, like all those glam bands. Like I like to make everything just look fun and easy. I'll drink a beer bong while playing a solo. Like, you know what I mean? But like, to be totally honest with you, what people don't understand is that I work so hard and I worry and I write and I like, you know what I mean? Like when I'm focused, people don't see all the hours that I'm shedding. Do it, whether it's licks or material or whatever. Like I just constantly write and I constantly do things. I'm obsessive. But like if someone tells me my song's good or if, like they like my soul, I'm like, oh yeah, whatever, dude. Like that's how I'm wired. I just want it to look easy and good, and I want to ruin the illusion.
Sure. Well, the amount of work that you put into it, you want it to seem like it arrived effortlessly, even though you're like, you don't even know how much work I put into this.
Right. I am not a cork sniffer. And just like you said, like, I'm very outspoken with how I feel and what my beliefs are. I don't want to sit and talk theory or anything with anybody because I just don't feel like it's necessary. I know that I should, and I know that I should teach people my secrets, but like, or tell them how hard I work or whatever. But instead, I would rather people underestimate me and just write me off. I would rather that because then I'll be like, oh, cool. Pick me last. And again, pick me last. Watch what happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's how I operate. And I thrive off of like being the antagonist.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, when, Unearth was starting and you guys were because so much was happening in that particular scene, like you said, Converge, Cave In, then also on the other side of the spectrum, your Piebalds and everything else. And then Boston with a lot of old school hardcore. Did you, because Unearth, even though you guys did fit in with many of those bands and clearly played with them and were friends with them,
not really.
Okay. Like you guys always seemed like on the outside in not like a judgmental way, but just in a, Unearth is kind of over here.
Can I tell you? Okay. I've probably never said this ever before, but I'll tell you how ridiculous our claim to fame is, or whatever you want to call it, mediocrity. We played in this area and Buzz had a band called Point oh Four and I joined that band. And then it wasn't a great band, but I couldn't tolerate the singer. He was a bad singer, but he also was a dick to me. So I was just like, Buzz, I'm going to start a band. And I pulled out like my 7-string Universe and I'm like, check this out, 7 strings. And I started doing my shreddy stuff. And Buzz was like, oh, I really want to do this. But when we started playing, we wrote all this like really unique material, like especially even in our demos, had like breakdowns. And it was the precursor to everything we were about to do. And people just still chalked us up in Massachusetts as like, oh, it's Point oh Four. It's like, everyone had this like notion that we sucked and we were still this like shitty band. And I personally didn't like. I personally like Point oh Four. They sounded like Obituary meets like whatever. It was cool, like Bolt Thrower, But we never were tight with Caven. We never were tight with Converge. I mean, Kurt Ballew's my friend, but I don't think the rest of them could like point me out in a lineup. I love their band, and I'm not talking shit. Yeah. We became friends with like Diecast and bands like that, and Blood for Blood in the area and stuff like that. And we had our friend circles. But what I will say is that it wasn't until Indecision was nice enough, and we started playing with a lot of Victory bands, and Indecision was the first band that like noticed us, and we started sharing shows with them in Boston and vice versa. We would go to Long Island in New York City with them, and that's when we started getting recognized. So Unearth built it. We built ourselves off of playing Montreal, Long Island, New Jersey, and New York City the most. And then when we like got cool, we were like then cool in Boston. So it happened like completely opposite. And then I will tell you this, that like Unearth had this like, I don't know if you remember our first record, first full length, Stings of Conscience, right?
Of course. Yeah.
I think that's when we met, right? Yep. Yeah. So there was like this hype about us in Boston and on the East Coast. And then we like went to the West Coast. I remember we like showed up and like we got asked by like Brandon Chipetti and Bleeding Through and some of those people. And there were still like all those like, bands, like, I don't know, what were they called? Like fashion core bands or whatever, whatever they were. Not dissing them at all. But once they invited us over without knowing us to like to sleep on their floors and shit and hang out for a couple of days. We were playing like wiffle ball against our trailer because we were a bunch of jocks. We all had short hair and like Trevor did. And like, we're all jockey. So they immediately were like, oh, these guys suck. They're jocks. And they didn't really like call us much after that. Brandon Chipetti's a good friend of mine now and stuff like that. And I doubt he even remembers, but I remember we were kind of like not cool because we didn't have like the fucking hair and you know what I mean? And like the girlfriend with herpes and stuff, like we didn't have all that.
Sure.
Yeah. We weren't LA enough. So we actually like, I think Unearth, to its very core was the band that, I think the cool kids like were wondering why we got so big, but we connected really well with like the guy who swings a hammer that listens to metal. Like he can like look at Ken Susi on stage and go, oh yeah, that guy's pointing at chicks and blowing kisses and fucking, and then like chonging beers. Like I want to hang out with that guy. You know what I mean? So like the common person was like, the we call them in Massachusetts, like, yeah, dudes, like the guys that say like, yeah, dude, back to you all the time. Those are the guys that I think like liked us. And we built a fan base of like people like that and not the cool kids. And I appreciated that more.
Mm-hmm, sure. And
we're working for it.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with that. I think it's what, at least in my estimation, what made Unearth like interesting to people like the yeah dudes, but then also like your hardcore kids and then your metal kids is because you definitely just completely leaned into like, if you were playing metal, you were playing metal for this part. If you were playing hardcore and a breakdown, this is what you were doing. Yeah. Like you fully embrace each moment as it kind of, went through the song. And I think that's why people really were just like, oh, they weren't kidding about this breakdown,
Right. Like, yeah. Cause we in the early days when I say we go back to the Victory days and playing, like we were cool with like Brian Fair and Overcast. Like they were like bigger bands, and Killswitchers were our peers because they were actually not a big band. Unearth was bigger than them before Killswitch blew up. And we were a band longer than them. But what I will say is that there was a piece of our music that like we would play a show with Shadows Fall in the same weekend, and then we'd play a show with Hatebreed at the same weekend on another show. And Unearth realized quickly in our demo tape era, like Above the Fall Man, that we would do well in the Shadows Fall audience, but we wouldn't do as well as the Hatebreed audience. They wouldn't take us in as much just because we weren't heavy enough. So then I was saying to myself, like, okay, well, this is where we start like throwing in like New York like style or North Carolina style breakdowns like Prayer for Cleansing and actually Undying, one of our favorite bands like growing up. So we started like really figuring out like the line between hardcore and that new like wave of metal or hardcore, like that Undying stuff that was a little more melodic. And then I was always like about like sweep arpeggios and stuff. And like, believe it or not, like you watch Unearth now, Buzz sweeps like every other riff, right? And at the time, I was the only one doing that, and he saw that I got a lot of attention, and I think he started doing it like, oh, you know what I mean, more and more and more. But originally, I was like putting Tosin Abasi told me this one time. We were doing a guitar clinic, and he goes, "I think you're the first band and or person to ever put a breakdown with a sweep arpeggio ever." He goes, like, real, like low key right now, real. I'm talking real. And I'm like, I go, I never thought of that, but maybe.
Sure, maybe. Yeah.
Like the One Step Away breakdown is like,
oh yeah.
And like I was doing that when I was, 20. You know what I mean? So like I tried to figure out as much as what I took from the 80s and the 90s into modern day and smushed it all together. And Buzz was a good partner with writing and stuff like that. He and I, wrote a lot of good stuff together.
Yeah.
Like knowing that was the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Undying, like the split 7-inch that you guys did with Undying, where it was just like, it was always, to me, it felt like all the stuff that you guys were doing, whether it was the full lengths or, tours, and it seemed, every band is thoughtful about the decisions they're making to a certain extent, but it was just like everything you were doing was, like you said, kind of collecting from a lot of these different audiences to hopefully bring them all in.
It's really funny that you just mentioned that, because I forgot we did a split 7-inch with them.
Yeah.
And like I know we did, but the funny thing is that I think we did My Desire as the song that was like against them, and it was Monition. It was called Monition. Okay, it was okay. So yes, Undying is very like melodic and wide sounding and very like My Dying Bride.
Yep.
And then ours was like similar, but like everything was very like that in that song. And I remember being super proud because like that Undying was like one of my favorite bands at the time, and I was just like, oh, I think we got them. Like I think we're like, well, just to be like, you know what I mean, like as good as them felt good to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the time.
Totally.
Yeah. Actually, history lesson real quick.
Please.
You need to listen to one of my favorite split 7-inch of all time. It was a band called Piecemeal. Do you remember Piecemeal from Massachusetts?
Piecemeal, Die My Will. Is this what you're doing?
Yes. So, dude. Okay, you know this. Okay, so anyone who doesn't know this, Piecemeal was like the hot shit band with Kevin from Ho Conspiracy and all that, and one of my favorite bands. But Die My Will did him so dirty, like on that like the Die My Will, like that, whatever that track is, Waking the Gods, that's what it's called, and the breakdown in there, I still believe that is the heaviest breakdown of all time. And I think personally, that ended Piecemeal. There's no way that like I've never seen a smackdown like that in my entire life for being such a hyped up band,
Yeah. No, it's those splits when you had them with each other and like one band kind of outdid the other. I never thought about it like what you were saying, where it's like, oh yeah, that ended that band.
Well, I was living it at the time. We would book Die My Will all the time at like VFW halls, and they were always sick.
Yeah,
and I was so happy for them. And Piecemeal was like that elitist, like we want to be cool, Converge, and we're straight edge hardcore, that whole thing. But like, oh man, there wasn't enough under the tank. It's like when a team when a good team plays a bad team in the playoffs, you know what I mean? In any sport, you're like, oh man, they like meet in the finals and they get destroyed. That's what happened to them. And I remember being like, God damn, that's like dude, a month or 3 months ago, I actually somehow bumped into the dude from Die My Will online. We somehow crossed. And he wrote me like, hey dude, like, I just wanted to let you know, I was in a band called Die My Will. You might remember. I was like, you don't even understand like how much I love your band. And we became friends and we started talking, and I would talk to him all day about Die My Will.
That's incredible. Yeah. That band is so sick. And I agree. Like it just seemed like they were just weirdos from Connecticut. So I could see why you would identify with them.
Oh, so heavy.
Yeah.
They didn't use noise gates. So even when they were playing heavy riffs, they would like pause and everything, be like, it's like so between like bands like that and all that, and then like another band, actually, a band got us wicked heavy was All Out War.
Oh, sure.
Playing with, being a 20-year-old kid playing with like grown ass men playing metal was a different vibe. because I felt like there was so many times where like I would like, would be doing shows, like a weekend of shows with All War, and I would like go outside and like call my girlfriend, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I've seen these guys a bunch, and I go outside, and then like you see the bouncers all bleeding from the head getting thrown out like a cartoon, and I'm like, oh yeah, oh, I gotta go see how many people are getting murdered right now.
Totally.
But it was like the fat guy Olympics. They were so heavy. And Mike Rudberg, our original drummer, used to say it. He goes, the heaviest breakdowns are the ones that are not heavy. You know they're heavy, like when you hear the breakdown and then you hear sneakers hitting the floor. That's when you know, like you can audibly hear the Nikes go in between the breakdowns. That's when you know your band is sick.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many times where I have said, why can't I get like my favorite hardcore band shirt with, maybe a gift for my mom who like loves the Beatles, or maybe if I had a brother to be like, that's like super into skating. How about like a Dropkick Murphy skate deck? Oh my gosh. Let's talk about our friends at rockabilly.com. You knew I was going to talk about them, but that's because they are an amazing partner to the show and support music in a very real way, because they sell officially licensed merch from bands of all shapes and sizes. Like I said, you can buy hardcore stuff, metal stuff, classic rock stuff, hip hop. And on top of that, you can also buy all these different variations, whether it's like tote decks or sunglasses or drinkware. It's everything. It's everything you could possibly want and more. They use a promo code for this particular show called 100 Words or Less. Use that promo code. It will get you 10% off your order. Just input that in the, promo code box and boom, there you go. That's basically me giving you free shipping. Officially licensed merch ships from the Midwest here in the United States of America, gets to you wherever you live, and it's very convenient and easy. And they got so many items. They have over 500,000 items, which I'll bet you if I actually counted that, they probably have more than 500,000. I guess that's technically part of the tagline, more than 500,000, but they have a lot. Let's just put it that way. So go to rockabilly.com, browse around, and enjoy what they have going on. So when you started to, get out and tour and experience that side of, being in a band, because, I mean, truthfully, like the first 5 or 6 years of your guys' like existence was true, like relentless touring. Like you guys were, 200 plus shows a year.
Yep.
How, and because you were also probably burning the candle at both ends in regards to like, oh yeah, I'm a party guy, and then also touring and, doing all this. Were you like, did you feel any semblance of burnout, or were you just able to ride the youth wave, so to speak?
Up until we met Damage Plan, we were not really like, we had like drinks backstage every once in a while. It was like a celebratory, like, hey, come to the bar, let's take a shot together, like me and Trevor, right? Yeah. But like after Damage Plan, things changed significantly. Like when we started touring with like Damage Plan, then Slipknot, and like all these other bands that really knew how to party, and there was like, crazy stuff backstage that you would never have like access to. Like, if you think about it, Diamond Vinny had like, they owned a strip club. So everywhere we went, there was 20 strippers that were backstage wanting to drink and do drugs and hang out, So like we became like, I remember we like left for tour, and Trevor's wife at the time, like she saw us like a year and a half later, all like she came to one of our local shows, and she's like, you guys look like shit. You guys look like you gained, like each one of you guys gained 20 pounds and stuff. And we're like, what do you mean? And we're like drinking whiskey and eating pizza with like, like putting, ranch on it, like we're like, what are you talking about? But we became like, it got to a point with me in 2006 where I actually said to myself, like, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'm cutting back completely. I'll drink to celebrate, but I will not continue to drink the way I was drinking, because the way we were drinking was literally like dangerous.
Right.
I would say like life-changingly, dangerous at that time. So yeah. I was like 27, and I'm like, I'm starting to I feel depressed. I don't feel right in my body. I don't feel happy in life, So like I cut it back. I still like to drink, but only when I'm celebrating.
Right. And the touring aspect, as far as just like the social battery that you were able to like keep up, did you have to, I guess, calibrate, when you were putting yourself out there in a very like real way of like, okay, I'm going to be hanging out all night and doing this, and then understanding that you had to cut back on certain times? Or was it basically just, balls to the wall as much as you could?
Yeah, it wasn't like an intent, like, but there would be times like, especially in like 2004 or during Ozfest and stuff like that, where you would like, I would drink myself to like literally to pass out till like at like 3 p.m. and then I'd wake up and then I'd like redo that over. Like I would like wake up, eat dinner, and then pass out by 3 a.m. You know what I mean? I pass out twice in a day from over boozing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we did that for years to a certain degree because it was just really fun. But I think as you get older, you just say to yourself, like, you know, this is unsustainable. It's fun for now, but it's not a lifestyle that I choose to keep. And we cut back significantly. You know, you have to. Some of the other guys in my band, like, still, like, they drank for a lot longer than me. They used to make a joke that I was captain of the team good times of the band. I was like the captain because I'd make shit happen. But then, like, once I stopped drinking, they called me like captain of the team cell phone. You know, they'd be like, "Oh, you suck now. You're just on your phone." And I'm like, "Well, I can't do this
right
every day." You know,
right.
So yeah, and plus, like, I still like to play hockey and stuff. So I was coming home and I was like, "Oh, can't skate. I don't feel good." You know, so like I you know, started taking care of myself a little bit better.
Sure. And
yeah,
when you were, you know, when the band, I mean, your first couple releases with Eulogy, and then obviously moving over to, you know, putting out some records with Metal Blade, you guys were, you know, making a living. You guys were living off the band, and how you as you were kind of going into that transition of like living off your band, I wouldn't say making the living, and like how is that influencing it? Is that just the back of our minds?
Actually, I feel like once we started making money with the band, we lost all control. That's the crazy part about success and money and stuff. I feel like when you're in a band, there's something very like a band that's like breaking out. There's something very organic about getting together with a group of guys and making this magic. And you know, there's certain people that pull more weight than others, but you appreciate, you know, other people for, you know, doing their roles within the band other than maybe writing. But I felt like we were making some money, and then I felt like out of nowhere, history started changing. Everybody's perception of like how we got here started changing. And it was like, we should all be in the room and we need to like write a record. And I would be like, well, me and him are writing the, you know, like we wrote the other records. Like, you know, like why do we all have to be in the room? It's almost a waste of time, you know? So like there was stuff like that. And then financially speaking, some guys were married, and, you know, we're trying to build a nest egg to like get guys to be able to afford being on tour or not on tour, you know, at any time of the year. And like we came to an agreement, and then the next thing you know, somebody's like emptying their bank account for, you know, a kitchen or something, you know, like remodel, and you start dealing with that kind of stuff. And there's a point where, you know, maybe I'm the guy who's more financially responsible, to the point where I would be like, you know, let's not. I was like, so Metal Blade gave us a van, for free, or for like as a part of our signing bonus. It was a brand new E350 van, and I think you know this. That's like amazing, especially if you get hotels every night and a driver. Like you get driven everywhere and you sleep, whatever. But like, you know, we get to a point where in your career where like you got 4 guys looking back at you saying, well, we shouldn't take the van because like we're a bus band now and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but the bus is $50,000 and the driver is this amount and the gas is this amount. It's like, can we just like, you know, still kind of tour modestly and make some money? And like, you know, you get into these like struggles so you don't end up making money. Like, so when we did our like biggest tour ever, I remember doing the whole tour, and I knew we were spending a ton of money, and I voiced my opinion, but I had to like, you know, fall on my knees for the rest of the guys and their egos. Not to say that like, you know, I was right and they were wrong at the time, but like we came home from the tour and our business manager walked in the room. We're all like, hey, what's up? How you doing? He's like, all right, everybody sit down. You're freaking broke, you know, and you just work for 6, you know what I mean? Like months, you know what I mean? On like touring and selling merch and all this stuff. And you come home and you're in the red. So there's a lot of like eye-opening stuff that happens with bands too, where sometimes if you're the one who's like waving the red flags, like people still won't listen. And you know, one of the things that led me out of Unearth was one, you know, somewhat, you know, I guess my take on, they always call me a pessimist because I'm a realist. Right. I'd be like, hey, you know, can't spend 11 when you make 7. And hey, your projections are off. We you know, like you're saying we're going to get paid this amount from, you know, the shows. And you said we're going to make this amount in merch, but we haven't done that in 5 years. You know, like I was always the bearer of bad news. And sometimes like people want to hear that. And And then when you're right, there's no happiness in that. People just look at you even more as an asshole for being right. So that's partly disagree. We disagree on things. So money can ruin bands. Money, not like we're making so much money and everyone's like running around, but people spend money. And that was like one of my big lines. I remember specifically saying when everybody was emptying their bank accounts at one point, I said, I will not tour if so-and-so, meaning like whoever, can't pay their cell phone bill or their cable bill for the month. Like, I have the money. I know how much money I have. Like, you should have the same amount. Like, if I have that money and you don't, that means you didn't spend it right, So, and sure enough, when that time came, I was the one being like, okay, I'll do it, when I shouldn't have.
Yeah, absolutely. And your passion and desire for, creativity and playing music and doing the, whether it's different musical expressions, like I'm picking on you in regards to like the sweatpant boners, like you just like I bring up that band not to yes, it's funny and obviously a sense of humor, but like you tend to like to collaborate with a lot of different people, and then when you find the people you like to work with, you kind of tend to try to figure out different ways to continue to work with them. Has that always been like you enjoy the process of collaboration?
Yeah, I actually love the idea of maybe my brain's just calibrated towards the 80s. Like in the 80s, you had like great musicians like Cyndi Lauper or Billy Idol, or like you would like look at people and you would say, I know who that is, right? So when I was doing the Sweatpant Boners, like Robbie Roadsteamer was this guy who's this like North Shore asshole who would sing songs called like Let's Drink in the Pit and Save Your Virginity Till We Come to Your Town, or like I Put a Baby in You. We were trying to like make construction workers, like we were trying to be the John Lennon and Paul McCartney of poop humor for all the construction workers in Massachusetts. And believe it or not, that band like was selling out venues that were like huge, like in Boston for a while.
Right.
So like I like grabbing things that are like organically awesome and just trying to take them as far as I possibly can. And the same thing goes for like production and stuff. Like I worked with a band called The Contortionists, and I helped write and record their first record, Exoplanet. And at the time, they were a baby band, but I saw so much promise in them that I wanted to do their record, and I was right because they're a great friggin' band, still to this day. So I like jumping on things, and you're a musician, you get this. Like sometimes you hear something, but you hear it through your filter, and you're like, the band doesn't have it, or this artist doesn't have what I have to offer, and if I showed it to them, maybe it would be cool. And I like that kind of like ping ponging.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Collaboration is so exhilarating.
Totally. And plus, in turn, it probably helps you become, working with different people helps you sharpen your own craft as well, where you're just like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. This other person now makes me think about my art in a different way.
Well, it's true. And to be honest with you, in some of the darker periods of Unearth, while I was in it, working with others actually gave me the ability to see past some of the noise that was happening in the band and remove myself from it. Like, for instance, I wrote the majority of a record called Darkness in the Light. And at the time, I wasn't in a great place. I had my wisdom teeth out and I was taking oxys for my, I had a really bad wisdom teeth situation. And I had them taken out and I was just miserable, dating the wrong girl, like all that kind of crap was like piling on, and Unearth wasn't in a great place either. And I wrote this whole record, and like, because I separated myself from everybody was a nice little release. And at the time I was writing a lot of pop music, so it made me miss metal. So that happens to me a lot too. I tend to like, I'll be in the middle of a metal record and I'll be like, oh, I want to write this pop song, and then vice versa.
Right.
Yeah.
When you were, when you were leaving Unearth and, you continued to be creative and everything like that, did you feel, because I mean, when people are so intertwined with a band where it's like, oh yes, Ken Unearth, like this is what I know him to be. Was it difficult to kind of, build up your own identity, not like externally, but just like in your own head, being like, who am I if I'm not this person in this band? Or was that, I guess, an easy process for you because you were excited to see what's next?
No, what's really funny is that like I know what you mean by that. And the one thing I didn't want to do was be like, and I hate to throw like old references, but like, for instance, when Aerosmith broke up, Joe Perry went out and did his own project. I didn't want to be Joe Perry, like of Aerosmith, like going out there and trying to like, start from scratch with this like new band and this whole thing. I wanted to just make a lateral move. I was more so content with like what I've done. And you can't take the great years that I put, like, I mean, I started Unearth. I picked Trevor to be the singer. I asked Buzz if he wanted to play guitar. Like, I have so much to champion with that band to where, like, when I removed myself from it, it was for a good reason because we just weren't seeing eye to eye on just about everything. And from that point on, I felt like I'm still me. Like, I'm like, if someone will be lucky to have me, if maybe it's just me like knowing my self-worth, but I was like, I'm a great performer and I'm a great guitar player too. Someone's lucky to have me in their band because I'll put 1,000% into it. So when the As I Lay Dying thing happened, it really wasn't planned at all. I just left Unearth and then that opportunity popped up. Just like you started off this podcast by saying like, oh, I love you because you're honest and you say what you say, and whatever. I had to give them the same speech. I said, I'm Ken Susi. Like, if the party dude in Unearth can't handle As I Lay Dying, like, then you got some fucking problems.
Right.
So,
right.
You know what I mean? And they shouldn't have had me play guitar. Like, I loved playing, guitar with Phil and the guys, and the whole experience was great. But like, if Tim was going to do what he was going to do, he shouldn't have had me in the band because like, what else would you expect from a guy like me?
Right. Oh, yeah.
I don't run from bullies. I'll slap them in the mouth,
Right. Totally. And the idea where it's like it's not like you were an unknown quantity. It's like people are like, you know what business you're getting into. You're getting into the Ken Susi business. Like, you should be aware of this.
Right. It comes with a few off-color marks about everything.
Sure.
And, a couple, as I call it, turkey tapping, like here and there. And
yeah,
but for the most part, like, I'm the guy you want on your team. If I'm not on your team, you'll hate me. Like it was the same thing in sports. Like, as a kid, like, if I was not on your team and you were in the opposing bench or the stands, you would be booing me. But if I just so happen to get traded to another team, like, you would definitely want me because I'm an asset.
Right. A few last things with the kind of, the fun yet confrontational nature of you being on stage. Like, there's, I mean, no one can ever forget seeing you flash your guitar that says "Eat a Dick" on it, because that's just like incredible. I am sure you encountered many people that did not find that funny, either in the crowd, like, or maybe I'm just presuming, but like, did people like legitimately be like, I want to fight you because I saw this? Like,
no.
Okay,
I was surprised by that because I can throw down, so I think people kind of knew I can fight and stuff. I come from Boston, so it's not like no one's gonna say anything to me, but no one's ever given me shit about it either.
That's good.
Which was pretty surprising. What I'm even more surprised about is I used to jump like into the audience and kiss a girl in the front row, which I thought was pretty ignorant. And that you know what I mean? Like, that like happened. So I'm like, I'm surprised no one like slapped me then, but
totally.
But I used to write my own phone number on my arm and literally not play riffs and be like, do you have my number down? Okay, cool. I can continue, like, I was there for fun, for a good time, not a long time, So, no, I'm surprised no one ever gave me shit like about that.
Yeah.
It was just a thing. And I think, you know what though? I think if you admit that you don't like that, you're kind of square. So you're not going to say that out loud. If you're at a show and some dude does something super ridiculous and it says like "eat a dick" and you're being funny, most people aren't going to go, oh, I can't get with him. Most people are going to be like, what's wrong with you? Like, that's pretty funny, like.
Right. Yeah, like, you're not actually saying this to me. It's like, yeah, the problem is you. Like, it's not the "Eat a Dick" guitarist. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said before, like, I think a lot of the elitists weren't gonna like me anyway. So I just like got down with the people that like who wanted to make memories.
Right.
In the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you've worked in the music industry like producer and then obviously playing in a band, but like, you've worked at, a lot of different, well, not a lot of different, but the, guitar companies, equipment companies. Was that like a logical extension for you to like step into, or was that something that you had to be not convinced, but be like, oh, I guess I can take this, for lack of a better term, office job, even though so much of it is obviously just hanging out at shows?
Well, it's really funny that, like, I'm glad you brought this up. Like, a lot of people ask me about Fishman, but nobody really asked me about, like, hey, was this a interesting move or whatever? But what I will say is, I'm the one of the only guys that's ever really like rocked the stage to the caliber that I have. Like, like I've played some shows like in front of 90,000 people and shit, and then I punch into work and I'm just like anybody else in the office, right? So, I went into that knowing that I had a business and finance background so I could handle it. But I also took that, like, show mentality, like everything, like the show's got to go on. We got to get this product out. We got to do this thing. So I always like knew how to run things, especially from being with Unearth. But like, all I'm trying to say is that not many people, everyone always focuses on like Ken Susi or any band member that's like playing in a band and what that's like. But to be honest with you, one of my biggest like, things of all time that I've done in my career, most successful thing I've ever done is bringing Fluence for Fishman off the ground with Larry Fishman. I went in there to try some pickups and I recognized that like he had the most, I told him specifically, I want to be a part of history. Like I'm not here because like I need a job from Fishman. I literally cannot believe what I'm seeing right now because I was one of the very first people to like go in there and talk with Larry and like schmooze around and talk and pal around with Larry. And I literally like grabbed a pickup. I went there, grabbed a pickup, and like in 2 days after that, I called him. He gave me his personal number. And Larry Fishman is like the coolest guy on the planet. So I literally was like, I just want to be a part of history. You don't have to pay me. I just want to show up to work. And like, I just want to make sure that this works for you because this is insane that nobody knows what this is. And he and I argued over like, what do I pay you? And I'm like, I don't care. Like we did that for a while. It didn't really matter. So, but we're like in 7 or 10 years now, I think we've made like $27 million, right? Like off of like the whole, just the Fluence aspect of the brand or something like that. And like we've done tremendous things and we've changed the landscape of guitar pickups, just with Larry's technology and his expertise and stuff. And me just kind of like being his mouthpiece and running around and the artist relations guy and making things happen. And he made me a brand manager. So I do procurement stuff and like help out at the office and make sure everything flows right. But that's the most important thing that like I can't like express this enough. Like I met my wife at my work. She took a school of kids that wanted to be like, there was like a school of rock kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
And she was there to show them how if you fail in music, like there's another world out there for you if you fail in music, or and they could use me as an example. Like this guy's famous, but he's also like, working here too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had the job because I was on both sides of the industry. So, I'm very proud that I got like my band off the ground, but I think like for the higher purpose and history, like I think people remember Fluence pickups a lot longer than they will remember Unearth, the band.
Yeah.
So
that's exciting.
Yeah. I caught lightning twice.
Yeah.
And it's like an amazing feeling.
That's incredible. The last thing I wanted to hit was the because you played so many different types of shows, gone on so many different types of tours, not only with Unearth, but obviously like As I Lay Dying, the pop stuff you've done. There has to be shows that stick out in your mind where it was like, oh, we went over like a fart in church, whether it was like we should not have played. Okay.
Well, no, I know where you're going. Like you're just saying, like, what are the bad stuff that you've done, right?
It's just the reason I ask you that is because I know that you probably have very clear memories of that. But on top of it, I just find it, especially for bands or artists that are like trying to be in a lot of different places, you have to experiment and you have to put yourself in these weird situations. So, yeah, what sticks out in your mind?
Okay, so that's a great question because, like, yeah, I can tell you, like, I can sit there. I'm like, oh, I was rubbing my nipples in front of 100,000 people at Vakken, like I can say that. I've done that, right? I played so many bad shows that, like, sometimes when I play good shows in front of like that many people, I'm like, doesn't matter. Tomorrow's gonna suck. You know what I mean? And like I stopped caring about that, right?
Right.
Because I remember I was at my best friend's house and they were watching like us Unearth. They on TV. They're like, what was it like to play in front of like how many people were there? I'm like, probably like 50,000. And they're like, what'd that feel like? I'm like shit. Because the next day we played in front of 14. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I knew it was gonna suck the next day.
Right.
So no, but when we played, like there's no feeling like being the breakout band. You can't do anything wrong. you can like just keep playing gigs. People love to see you. You could play anywhere you want. But then when you hit that point where you're like, you know, you're starting to plateau and go down, that's where I thrived a little bit, because I love being Ken Susi on a stage where the whole room hates me. Like my wife and my parents and stuff, they ask me sometimes, like, oh, like, what's the greatest feeling in the world? And I'm like, I love being booed. Like, I love like that feeling that you get all over your body. That's like so icky. I love it. And like when we had a bad show, I would like slide with both, like, you know, knees on the ground and be like, ah, you know, like in people's faces. And they would just be like, oh, that's awful. And I'd be like, I know, clutching your pearls, you know, like, this is a hardcore show. Have fun.
Right.
I really like to like do the bad show thing. But then like when most of your shows turn into bad shows, that's when you know there's a problem. Right. And like, you know, there was some years with Unearth where like, you know, 20 paid, you know, like 100 maybe, like, you know, and the merch numbers are bad. And then like what became like a bad show, you know what I mean, then becomes a pattern. I was like, that's when it started psychologically messing with me. I started creating personas on stage, like Statue Man, where I just wouldn't move. And I would just like, you know what I mean? Like if you ever meet Fred Ziomek from, do you know Fred from, he used to play in Prong?
No.
Plays in Low Crass Brats or something. He's the greatest dude in the planet. He used to be in Darkest Hour. He was on that tour and he's playing with Prong, and I'm like, and he's like, oh, tonight's show sucks. I'm like, oh yeah, watch this. And I'm like, I'm working on a persona called Statue Man, and he's like just sitting side stage, arms folded, laughing at me because I didn't move an inch. I would just like try to stay so tight and just play the whole show. And like, you know, and then like sometimes you get into that space where you're like looking into the sky and you're like, oh, what do I got to do when I get home? Like, I got to mow the lawn. I got to pay my taxes. Like, you know, you start drifting like spiritually too. And it's pretty sad, but I appreciate all the good and bad that I've done, because, you know, it keeps me grounded. And I could be in the biggest band in the world. Like Slipknot could ask me to play, or Metallica could ask me to play, and I still would be Ken Susi, who doesn't give a fuck.
Right.
You know, and assume it's going to end tomorrow.
Yeah. You're like, I'll just ride this out for what this is.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. But there's no feeling, as I said, like, there's no feeling like being the hot shit. And like, you know what I mean? And like the whole room spicy with like whatever, they're just clamoring to see what you're going to do. I love that. I love that just as much, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ken, I appreciate you hanging out, dude. This was very enjoyable for me. Thanks for letting me ping pong around your brain, my friend.
No, dude, I love it. And again, like you were probably, we called you Uncle Ray for years for a reason. 'Cause you know, like me and Slow and the guys, we love you. You're a genuine person. You're always great to us. You were pretty much like our first friend from the West Coast as a band.
Yeah.
Because as I said, all the cool kids didn't like us. And then when we met you, you were like super cool. I just didn't know what band you were in because I was too cool.
It's fine. It's fine. It's not a problem. As long as I'm your friend, that's all I cared about.
Yeah. Just every single time I saw you, you were Curl Up and Die, and I'm like, oh, how's Curl Up and Die doing? You're like, I'm in Taken. I'm like, I'm so sorry. But but no, dude, like you're the best. You're one of the best people I've ever met in the industry, and I'm so glad that, like, an honor to be here.
There you go. That was Ken Susi, the founding member of, or co-founder, or whatever you want to call it, of Unearth. Just listen to Unearth record. I mean, the Endless Fall. Wait, no, I'm totally blank. Oh, actually, I think that was our first EP. But the first LP, The Stings of Consciousness, is such a good record still. I jam it on the regular, and man, it's so good. Love the band throughout their whole career, and they're still doing the thing. And Ken's just not a part of it, but and I love all of those other members that were also involved in that early iteration of Unearth. Trevor, Buzz, those dudes, just ride or dies. Love it. Love it. So anyways, thank you very much, Ken, for your time. And thank you very much for you, the listener. Next week, I have another fun guest, Mark Rose. He plays in a band called Spitalfield. And this conversation just went into some arenas that I was not anticipating him to kind of pull out. I personally love Spitalfield, especially their last LP before they broke up. They have a new EP that just got released, and I had to have him on, talk about the Victor years and so many other things. So that's what we got next week. Mark Rose from Spitalfield. And until then, please be safe, everybody.